أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين أسد الله الغالب غالب على كل غالب مظهر العجائب يعصوب الدين نبع العظيم أول المسلمين ثاني أهل القصاص زوج البتول كسيم النار والجنة علي بن أبي طالب قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وابتغوا إليه الوسيلة صلوا على محمد وآل محمد In the religion of Islam, we're all aware that many people identify themselves to different schools of thought. There's difference in theology, there's difference in jurisprudence, and there's difference in spirituality. You'll notice that with the other Muslims, they will say that I am following a certain individual in my theology, but I'm following a different person when it comes to my jurisprudence. Or I'm following a different person when it comes to my spirituality. Alhamdulillah, the Shias are the only Muslims that will say it doesn't matter what field you look at. Whether it is spirituality, whether it is Islamic law, whether it is theology, aqaid, anything that you say, what are we? We are Jaffari. That's our statement and an overall blanket. We are the Jaffari. So inshallah today I would like to examine why is it that the Imams that came before our sixth Imam, they also followed the same religion. They had the same jurisprudence. They had the same theology. But why are we called Ja'faris? Why are we not associated with the Prophet, for example? Why are we not associated with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, for example? Why is it that we are known as the followers of the fiqh of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam? So inshallah today let's see and analyze what did this Imam do? And why is it that we associate our jurisprudence with him? So the title of this lecture is going to be The King of Jurisprudence, our holy Imam alayhi salam. So we begin by saying that during the time of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, who was obviously the father of this Imam, we see that Bani Umayyah was still ruling. Now Bani Umayyah, as you know, they ruled for roughly around 89 years. And during the period of their reign, during the period of their Khilafat, they were such that they were antagonizing the Ahlul Bayt. They had enmity towards the Ahlul Bayt. They blamed Amir al-Mu'mineen for killing their ancestors in the battles of Badr and Uhud and Khandaq, etc. So the hatred that they had became so much that people began to revolt against Bani Umayyah. Now, during the time of our sixth Imam alayhi salam, he spent the first 15 years under the guardianship of his grandfather, Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. First 15 years. So he learnt, he saw his grandfather write what? Sahifa Sajjadiyah. He saw his grandfather write Risalatul Hukuk. He saw his grandfather give supplications and du'as on how to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he learnt the spirituality aspect from his grandfather. Then he became under the patronage of his father. Now Imam, our fifth Imam alayhi salam, says that I didn't just teach my son Islam. No, the sixth Imam says my father taught me astronomy, chemistry, astrology, physics, biology, history and Islamic jurisprudence. You see, Islam is not limited to one science. You see, many people come today and they say, you know, Islam is such a backward religion. Islam 14 centuries ago, these guys don't know. Okay, we look at the 13th century. We have a scholar by the name of Sheikh At-Tusi. Yes, one of our ulama that is very respected. And he died when? In the year 1274. Okay, he proposed a model, a theory, that not only are the planets moving, but the earth is also spinning on its own axis. And what did the people do? They laughed at him. They called him crazy. Because this is the 13th century. Western scholars at this point, what did they believe? They believed the earth was still. It doesn't move. So Nasruddin al-Tusi, he gives this analogy where he says the earth in itself is moving, which is why we have day and night, which is why we have distillation of the stars, which is why at one point we see the sun, at another point we see the moon. And why is it the stars disappear? So he mentioned all this. So they say Islam is a backwards religion. We don't know these things. We say, hold on a minute. When did you guys discover that the earth was spinning? Let's have a look at that. You've got who? Copernicus, who came in the 15th century. You've got Galileo, who came in the 16th century. 400 years before you guys knew the earth was spinning, a Shia scholar said this earth is not still. And this isn't even the Imams. This isn't even the Prophet. This is the scholars of the religion of Islam. Now imagine who the Ahlul Bayt are. Imagine the knowledge of the family of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore we understand that Islam taught all these sciences. So this Imam learned from his father, and then when his father passed away, this Imam has now become the ruler. So what happened was a few people got together and they said, we need to overthrow the Bani Umayyah dynasty. We need to get rid of them. So what happened? They used a slogan. The slogan was, the Mazloom Hussein. That was their slogan, right? And what was the heading of their slogan? Give the Khilafat back to Al Muhammad. So this was their slogan. Now, as you can imagine, the Shias of that time, what did they say? Perfect. Let's give it back to Al Muhammad. So somebody came to our sixth Imam and they said, look, there's a movement, a revolution, and they're saying, give it back to Al Muhammad. Our Imam said, when they say Al Muhammad, they don't mean us. So this person says, what do you mean? He says, you see, the Prophet had an uncle called Abbas. Abbas had children. Bani Abbas is a dynasty. They are looking to steal power from Bani Umayyah. They are using the Shias for their movement. I guarantee you, they will not give us the Khilafat. Even the own cousins of our Imam said to him, look, stop this, let's go. Bani Abbas is saying, we will give it to Al Muhammad. The Imam says, I guarantee you we're not going to get it. What happened? They overthrew Bani Umayyah. Bani Abbas came into power. The people said, give it back to Al Muhammad. They said, Asi Al Muhammad. It's us. Was our great-great-grandfather Abbas not the uncle of the Prophet? We're his descendants. We are Ahlul Bayt. We are Al Muhammad. So then the people came to Imam Sadiq and they said, Imam, look what they've done. The Imam says, I warned you. I told you, don't follow them. So when Bani Umayyah was gone and Bani Abbas is now rising, Mansur ad-Dawaqini was the first one who was the ruler of the empire of Bani Abbas. Now he was a person who harbored enmity and hatred towards the Ahlul Bayt. But not only that, he was very conjuice. He was a person who didn't like to spend. Now Islam tells us that being stingy is something that is detested. Okay? At least Bani Umayyah used to spend. Right? They were zalimeen. We personally believe they were all kuffar. But they used to spend in the way of the Muslims. They used to spend in the way of Islam. Hundreds and millions of dirhams and dinars. But Bani Abbas, they wouldn't spend. So now the people are thinking, chalo is to changa te Bani Umayyah. Paise de milde san. But now we get nothing. So what did they do? They came to the Imam, they said, this Mansur, he's very, very, stingy. He's not spending on the Muslims. What do we do? The Imam says, at the moment, let him do whatever he wants. Don't tackle him. Imam said, I am not going to get into a slinging match with him. Because the Imam saw an opportunity that no other Imam before him had. Which was that the Khilafah is now busy trying to establish itself. So let these guys do what they need to do. The Imam says, I'm going to start teaching Islam. I'm going to start teaching the fiqh of Al Muhammad. I'm going to teach the sciences that I learned from my father and grandfather. So what happened? Mansur would say, look, I'm not going to give you any money, but if you do want money, I have a condition. Koi sher sunao. Read poetry to me. But I have a condition. It has to be a poem that no one has read before. So you have to create your own poem. And if no one has read that poem before, the reward will be on the piece of paper that you write the poem on. So firstly, no one has to have recited this poem. It's your own poem. And the weight of the paper is the amount of money that I will give you. Itna kanjoos. Somebody came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and said, Imam, what do we do? The Imam says, I'll tell you. The Imam gave him a poem. Imam says, go recite this. There's no way he's heard this before. So the person is coming into the court. What did Mansur do? He had two people hiding behind the curtain who were very good at memorizing Arabic grammar. Somebody would come and they would recite a poem. He would say, Hanji, has anybody here heard this poem? These two people would come from outside of the curtain. Mansoor would say, "Tusi kaun ho? I don't even know who you are." Not knowing that they've planned it. And they would be like, "Oh, we're just poets. Have you heard his poem?" They said, "Yes." "Read it." And they would read it word for word. So Mansoor would say to the person, "This is not a new poem. I've heard it before." So this carried on going on for several days until the Shia of the Imam entered into Mansoor's court. He recited a poem that was so complex. The grammar of Arabic was to a level that human minds cannot comprehend, to the extent that even those two people behind the curtain said to Mansoor, "Sanu te nahi pata." I don't even know what he said, let alone how am I supposed to memorize this? So he looks at Mansoor and says, "So that means I get the weight of whatever I wrote this poem on?" He says, "Yes, of course, show me the paper." He says, "I didn't write it on a piece of paper." He said, "What did you write it on?" He said, "You see that big black rock over there, the big heavy rock?" He goes, "Mera sher us te likhe hai." So the Imams knew how to overpower Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas, but they did it through their intellect. They did it through their mannerisms. So how did Imam preach the religion, right? Because remember, Bani Umayyah didn't let any of the Imams preach. And Bani Abbas initially also said you're not allowed to teach. They were barred from teaching. The Imams were under house arrest. So the question arises, who gave Imam Sadiq the permission? It was Mansoor himself. Why? Mansoor goes to Hajj one day. He's trying to get toward Hajr Aswad, the black stone. He can't because of the rush of people. All of a sudden, he sees a young individual walking. The people begin to open like the way the sea opened for Nabi Musa alayhi salam. He's thinking, who is this man that he comes and the people move away and he easily gets to Hajr Aswad? I'm the Khalifa and I can't get there. So he says to his guy who was sitting with him, he says, "Who is this?" They said, "He is Jaffar ibn Mohammed. They call him a Sadiq." Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. They call him a Sadiq. He said, "Why?" They said, "Because he never lies and we are told that he has a lot of knowledge." He said, "Okay." All of a sudden a person comes towards Mansoor and says, "Are you the Muslim Khalifa?" He says, "Yes, I am." He says, "I have a legal issue, if you could please help me." He says, "Well, what is it?" He says, "A man has died, but his head is severed, so we don't know who he is. What's the blood money and who do we give it to? Because we don't know who his inheritors are." Mansoor says, "How am I supposed to know? A body with no head, how are you supposed to identify it?" So his advisor said, "Go ask that man. Maybe he will know." So they come to the Ahlul Bayt. Even the enemies, when they were stuck, they would come towards the Ahlul Bayt. So what happened? He mentions the situation. The Imam straight away says, 100 dinar. That's the blood money. So Mansoor says, "How did you know?" He said, "Because the Quran describes human beings in the state of 5 stages. The world before this world, the time in the womb, the time in this world, barzakh, and the day of judgment. So there's 5 stages, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. If you give this person 25 each, when you add it all together, it comes to the amount." They said, "Who do we give it to if we don't have anybody as inheritors?" The Imam says, "If there's no inheritors, you give it in the way of Allah as sadaqah." So now Mansoor thinks, hold on a minute, this guy was very smart. He has knowledge that I have never seen before. So he says to the Imam, he says, "Listen, I want you to teach Islam." So look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Allah says in the Quran, you plan and he plans. He is the best of planners. So what happened? Mansoor is now saying to the Imam, "I want you to teach." But he says, "Not in Medina. Go to Kufa." So the biggest mistake that Mansoor made was sending Imam Sadiq alayhi salam to Kufa. Why? Because when the Imam went there, he created the school of Ahlul Bayt. He preached the message of Al Muhammad, and the city of Kufa from that point onwards became a Shia country, a Shia city, a Shia place. Till today, go to Masjid al-Kufa, all surrounded by Shias. All of this is because our Imam. So what did he do? The Imam entered into Masjid al-Kufa and he began preaching. Imam had 4 students that I will mention to you. The first of his students was by the name of Nu'man, who history known as Abu Hanifah. ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਸ਼ੇਰ ਪੜਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ੇਰ ਸੁਣਾ ਦੇਣਾ. Abu Hanifah बड़ा मोहतबर सा नाम सही. Abu Hanifah बड़ा मोहतबर सा नाम सही. इमाम होगा तुम्हारा मगर गुलाम है सादिक का. He was a man who has his own school of thought. People ascribe to his faith. They say that 31% of the Muslims follow Abu Hanifah. 25% of the Muslims follow Malik. That's 56% of Muslims. Ask them, who was the teacher of Abu Hanifah? Who was the teacher of Malik? They don't know. Ahlul Sunnah claim that we love the Ahlul Bayt. Yes, they claim that we follow the Ahlul Bayt. Their most authentic book is called Sahih al-Bukhari. For them, the most authentic book. Did you know there's not even a single riwayah from Imam Sadiq in Sahih al-Bukhari? Not even one. And this is your most authentic book. Jhutiyan te jhutiyan di riwayatan likh lende ho. But nothing from the Ahlul Bayt. There's less than 10 riwayat from Amir al-Mu'mineen. There's only 3 from Az-Zahra. That's it. Yet you've got the father of cats and the father of this and the father of that, and you're narrating all that in your books. Our books contain more than 70,000 ahadith from this holy Imam. So Abu Hanifah, 2 years, he was under the tutelage of the Imam. The first day Abu Hanifah met the Imam, somebody brought Abu Hanifah to the Imam. The Imam looked at him and he said, who is this guy? So the person introduced him. He said, his name is Abu Hanifah. He's very knowledgeable. The Imam says, I don't see much knowledge in him. Straight away, I don't see much knowledge in him. They said, no, he's very good at Islam. He knows a lot about Islam. The Imam says, he looks to me like somebody who does qiyas. See, qiyas in Islam is haram. Qiyas is analogy where you derive your own rulings, your own understandings on what you think Islam is about. You see, this religion is revelation. It doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. Your understanding means zero. We only follow the Prophet and his family. That's it. I'll give you an example. If you look at the Holy Quran, in order to understand the verses, what do? We go to the tafsir. The tafsir explains to us what the verses mean. Now, if you look at all of Ahl Sunnah tafsir, all of them, right? They will say Ibn Abbas said this. Mujahid said this, Tabarani said this, Ibn Kathir said this, Fakhruddin al-Razi said this, Jalaluddin al-Suyuti said this. What did the Prophet say? What did the Ahlul Bayt say? It's all they said. Yet if you pick up the tafsir of our ulama, never has anyone ever given their own personal opinion. Every single tafsir begins with, he heard from him, he heard from him, he heard from him, who heard from the Imams. So this shows you that our religion of Shiaism is the only true religion of Islam, because we adhere to the Thaqalain, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. So the Imam says, okay, do you know what? He goes, I'll prove to you that you're a man of qiyas, right? He goes, Abu Hanifah, tell me, what is worse in Islam, murder or fornication? He says, murder is definitely a worse crime. Imam says, why? He says, oh, because the Quran says if you kill one person, you've killed the whole of humanity. That's a big crime. The Imam says, why is it that for murder you need 2 witnesses, but for fornication you need 4? If murder is worse than fornication, why is the evidence more for the other? Silence. The Imam then says, what is greater in the eyes of Allah, prayer or fasting? He says, prayer. The Imam says, why? He says, well, because on the day of judgment, they're going to ask us about our prayer. The Imam says, no. Because when a woman during the month has certain days where she can't pray and she can't fast, she doesn't need to make up the missed prayers, but she needs to make up the mixed fasts. So the Imam says, Abu Hanifah, you are using qiyas. The first to use qiyas was Shaitan, where he said, I will not bow to Adam, for I am created from fire, he's created from clay. That qiyas made him what? Shaitan ar-Rajim. Until the day of judgment, the Imam says, oh Abu Hanifah, I know you will not stop using qiyas, but I'm advising you stop. Abu Hanifah did what? He built his entire religion on qiyas. You see, if you look at the fiqh of Abu Hanifah, you'll find interesting things. They call him Imam al-A'zam, Imam al-Fuqaha, Imam this, Imam that. Yet they don't understand that had it not been for a Sadiq, this guy wouldn't have even known anything. What did he do? He took his teacher's knowledge and then twisted it. Applied his own qiyas, and now you have the Hanafis. A very famous incident by Bahlul, as you're all familiar with Bahlul, the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Bahlul was told to act crazy. Right? He wasn't crazy, he was told to act crazy. So what did he used to do? Was he used to have a stick and he used to say, this is my horse. And then he would kick it and say, chal mera ghode, chal, chal. And he would just run around the streets of Baghdad. Why? Because people would think he's crazy. But then at the same time, he would use his knowledge to guide people. So for example, one day Bahlul walks into a gathering. Abu Hanifah is sitting with all of his students and he's saying, there's 3 things that Imam Sadiq said that I disagree with. So already for you to even say I disagree with, who are you to disagree with the Imam? Anyway, he says, I have 3 things. So Bahlul can call. He goes, I'm going to have a listen. So Bahlul comes in, joins the gathering. So what happens? They say that the Imam taught Bahlul knowledge as well. So Bahlul was clued on. Abu Hanifah says that the Imam said that everything that you do, Allah does it. Right? Will of Allah. You know the Quran says, Amr Allah. So if you do something, that's not you doing it, that's Allah doing it. So why on the day of judgment are we going to get punished when Allah ne aap kita hai? He goes, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Second thing, he says, shaitan is made from fire, hell is made from fire. How can fire burn fire? Doesn't make sense to me. So he mentions a few other things as well, and he says, anything that you cannot see doesn't exist. So if you can see it, it exists. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. Balor picked up a brick and launched it straight onto the head of Abu Hanifah. As soon as he hit him, the people turned around and they saw Bahlul. Abu Hanifah said, how dare you hit me? I'm taking you to court. Bahlul says, chalo, let's go court. Chalo. What happened? They got to court. The king is there. Abu Hanifah says, he's injured me. He's hit me in my head with a brick. He says, Bahlul, did you do this? He says, Ji bilkul, I did this. He says, so you're not going to deny it? He says, no, I've got all these witnesses. Everybody knows I hit him. So the judge says, what's your defense? Why would you hit him? He said, because he said three things that he disagrees with my holy Imam. Mere Imam de barij gal hove, how can I be quiet? I'm going to defend my Imam. So Bahlul looks over at Abu Hanifah and he says, oh Abu Hanifah, you said that shaitan is made from fire. Hell is made from fire. How can fire burn fire? You're made from clay. This brick is made from clay. Did it hurt? He says, yeah, it hurt. Smacked me on my head. So it hurt, you agree, yeah? He goes, yeah. He says, can you show me the pain? He says, well, no, pain is psychological. I can't show you. He said, but you said if you can't see something, it doesn't exist. So you're lying, you're not in pain, you can't prove it. So now the court is all of a sudden gone quiet. They're like, yo, what's Bahlul doing? And then the final thing he says, did you not say everything is Amr Allah? He said, yes. He goes, so I didn't hit you, Allah hit you. Now all of a sudden the court thinks, Bahlul, I thought this guy was crazy. And then straight away, chal mere kore. And then he leaves. So one of the students of our holy Imam was Abu Hanifah, who would even say, had it not been for those 2 years I studied under the Imam, I would have been halak. Yet today people follow Abu Hanifah not knowing who his teacher is. Follow his analogy and qiyas and not follow the Ahlul Bayt. His second student was known as Malik ibn Anas. He's who? The Maliki school of thought. 25% of the Muslims follow him. Ask him, who is his teacher? We don't know. That's two. Now let's talk about the Shia students of our Imam. I'll mention two and then inshallah we go on to the Masaib. The last two students that I'm going to mention, the first one, his name was Jabir bin Hayyan. Okay, now understand, Jabir is known in the Western world as the father of chemistry. Jabir has written a 120-volume book on chemistry that is taught at GCSE and A level and even to the level of a PhD when it comes to chemistry. Jabir is recognized. Even Western scholars say that chemistry was invented by Jabir. That's what they think. That's how much Jabir was intellectually framed when he knew chemistry. Yeah, whenever Jabir would speak, he would say, I heard from my master Sadiq. I heard from my messenger. I heard from my master. I heard from my master. Jabir is recognized as the father of chemistry. Had it not been for Jabir, there'd be no chemistry. But had it not been for his teacher, there would be no knowledge of chemistry. So Jabir is recognized not only in the Islamic world but in the Western world. But the Imam taught him chemistry. Then there was another one. Now Hisham ibn Abdul Malik was a La'nati, part of Bani Umayyah. But there was also another Hisham ibn al-Hakam. Hisham ibn al-Hakam was a Shia. The Imam taught him how to debate atheists. You see, the Imam didn't teach all knowledge to all people. I'm not even going to talk to you. You're not going to comprehend this? Go away from me. The Imam would pick who to teach what. You see, so the Imam had students who were masters in all fields and all sciences, but different sciences. So for example, a person once comes to the Imam and says, I want to debate you. The Imam says, what would you like to debate? He says, I want to debate chemistry. The Imam says, Jabir ura. Showing you what? That forget the master. Debate the student first. That person would lose. He would say, okay, now I want to debate you on history. He would say, okay, for you, come over here, debate him. Then he would say, I want to debate you on the existence of God. He would say, Hisham, Aja. So the Imam taught different people different sciences. This person, Hisham ibn al-Hakam, he was taught about atheism and ilmul kalam. That's what he was taught. So one day they say that an atheist came to our holy Imam. He said that, I have a question. The Imam says, ask Hisham and then get back to me. The Imam leaves. The person says to Hisham, he says, can your God put the entire universe inside an egg without making the egg bigger and without making the universe smaller? Now, even Hisham was like, whoa. So where did he go? He goes to the house of the Imam. He says, oh Imam, I can't answer this question. The Imam says, okay, do me a favor. What is it? Go to the roof of my house. Go look around and then come back down. Okay. He goes up, comes down. The Imam says, what did you see? He says, I saw trees, I saw the skies, I saw the sun, I saw the mountains, I saw creation, He says, now go and tell him, it's not about whether God can do it or not. Nothing is impossible for God. But say to him, if Allah can fit the entire universe in your eye, how can He not fit it in an egg? Did your eye get bigger? No. Did the universe get smaller? No. Have you ever thought about it? The pupil, your eye, you have 5 senses as a human, yes? Your eye is the smallest of senses. Your pupil, the black part in your eye, that's it. That's the only thing that you can see from. All this white stuff, this is extra. So the black dot in your eye, you can see the whole universe. He would go back, he would tell that person, that man would become a Muslim. Once a person comes to the Imam and says to the Imam, show me Allah, I want to see Him. The Imam says, Allah says in the Quran, vision cannot perceive Him. He goes, no, show me your God, otherwise I don't believe Him. The Imam says, okay, you want to see God? He says, yes. He goes, look at the sun. So the guy looks at the sun, all of a sudden he turns away. Why? Because of the rays, right? It was too much. The Imam says, Kiyo. He goes, it's too powerful, too strong, my eyes can't take it. The Imam says, if you can't look at the created, how are you supposed to understand and look at the Creator? This is not how it works. God cannot be seen. So like this, the Imam taught many people. He gave them these knowledge. So this was an atheist debater that the Imam had. Then he had Jabir, as I mentioned, who was the master of chemistry. So the Imam had all this knowledge when it came to debating, and the Imam passed this knowledge. So the reason why we are Jaffari in fiqh is because this Imam was the only Imam that was given the opportunity to preach. He saw that the Khilafat was busy dealing with their own rubbish, let them deal with it. The Imam says, I'm going to preach the true message of Muhammad. And the students, they say 9,000 students graduated from the dars of our holy Imam. 3,000 from Imam al-Baqir, 9,000 students graduated from the Hawza of Kufa of our holy Imam, and they sat with him and understood. So if you're going to follow Abu Hanifah, if you're going to follow Malik, if you're going to follow Shafi'i, if you're going to follow Ahmad ibn Hanbal, do that. But on the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to you, who is your Imam? I dare you to say their name. I dare you to say to Allah on the day of judgment, my Imam is Abu Hanifah, because he'll be in hell. You wouldn't even want to claim him. Yet we, the Shia, are the only ones that can openly say, we have 12 Imams. We can name you all 12. Even when we bury the dead, we shake the shoulder and say, your Imam is, and then we mention the 12 Imams. Final point that I would like to end on is, think about a question. When you bury the dead, when do the question and answering start? It's a question we all have, like when you bury your father, your mother, your loved ones, you have a question in your mind. When did this person sit up for the questioning? Okay, final riwayat. So narrated it within Bihar al-Anwar and al-Kafi, the Prophet was burying Imam Ali alayhi salam's mother, Fatima binti Asad, salamullahi alayha. He buried her, and as they were throwing the dust on her body, the Prophet straight away would look at the grave and say, Ibnuki, Ibnuki. So the companions are like, Ya Rasulullah, what are you doing? You're talking to a dead person? So number one, when we say Ya Ali Madad and you say the dead cannot hear, your Prophet is speaking to dead. Unless you can show me the Fatima binti Asad was alive in her grave. So our Prophet spoke to dead. We follow the Prophet. You can follow whoever you want. So he said, Ibnuki, Ibnuki. So the companion said, Ya Rasulullah, what do you mean Ibnuki? He says, the angels have now come down after the last bit of dust that was poured. They are asking her, who is your Lord? She said, Allah. They said, who is your prophet? She said, me. But now they're saying, who is your Imam? And I don't want her to confuse me with Ali. Because I am also her Imam. But her son is also her Imam. I don't want her to get the question wrong. Therefore I am saying Ibnuki. Ibnuki meaning your son, your son. So when they ask you, who is your Imam? Say Ali. This shows us... Ya Ali. This shows us two things. That number one, the dead can hear. And number two, you will be asked in your grave, who is your Imam? You can say whatever you want. We will say Amirul Mu'mineen. So coming on to the days and the nights that we're on right now, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have been freed from imprisonment and they are now coming towards Karbala. You see the day of Arba'een, which is 20th Safar, which is not far, the Ahlul Bayt arrived in the field of Karbala, and this was the first time that they were given permission to cry and to mourn and to do matam and to lament on the dead. So when they arrived, they saw the bodies, everybody went towards their loved ones. Everybody went towards their people. Yet Sayyidah Zainab did not go towards Aun or Mohammed. She went straight to Abu Abdullah. Straight away. Why? She would throw herself on the grave of Imam al-Hussein. She would cry and she would say, oh brother, you would be so proud of me. Oh brother, we stood in the court of the La'in and I spoke like my father spoke. My tongue had the sharpness of the Zulfiqar. We overthrew Yazid al-La'in with just my words. Then after she goes to Abu Fadl Abbas and she goes to everybody else, at the end Sayyidah Zainab comes towards the graves of her sons. When she gets there, there's a woman already on the grave, and a woman who is crying and lamenting and saying, oh my son Aun, oh my son Mohammed. So Sayyidah Zainab thinks, who's this woman? Aun and Muhammad are my children, right? So who is this woman who's saying, oh my sons? So she taps the shoulder and she says, oh woman, who are you? She says, oh Zainab, I am your mother Zahra. You cry for my son, I will cry for your sons. How did the caravan reach Medina? Among these days, when the Arba'een is finished, the caravan arrived back into Medina. The way they arrived into Medina was something else. Imam Sajjad stops at the entrance of Medina and he says to a person who's a poet, he says, you are a poet, your dad's a poet, can you go into Medina before we come in and just do an elan? He said, what's the elan? He said, tell everybody that my father has been killed in Karbala. So this poet says, I went inside, I stood next to the grave of the Prophet and I said, Ya Ahli Yathrib, ala muqam lakum biha, qutil al-Husayn fi arde Karbala. Oh people of Yathrib, leave the city. Why? Because Hussein has been killed in Karbala. All of a sudden the Muslims began to gather around this man. His name was Bishr. They said, oh Bishr, what is this news that you have? So he's telling everybody. Then Baneen comes. You see, Baneen used to ask every day, where is Hussein? Never Abbas, never her other, only Hussein. He's my son. So she would say, oh Bishr, where is Hussein? Bishr says, who is this woman? They said, this woman is Baneen, mother of Abu Fadl Abbas. So Bishr says, Ya Baneen, a'adhamallahu lakil ajr, bimusabina waladikal Jaffar. May Allah give you patience on the martyrdom of your son Jaffar. She says, I didn't ask you about Jaffar. Where is Hussein? Then he would say, may Allah give you patience on your son Abdullah. She says, I didn't ask you about Abdullah. Where is Hussein? Then he would say, may Allah give you patience over the death of your son Abbas. At this moment, Baneen was holding a baby by the name of Fadl, Abu Fadl Abbas, his son. All of a sudden, she removes the baby from her hands, puts her hands on her head, the baby falls on the ground. She looks at Bishr, she says, Bishr, you have torn my heart into pieces, but even then I ask, where is Hussein? May all my sons be sacrificed. Where is Hussein? Bishr then says, A'adhamallahu lakil ajr ya Baneen bimusabina bi Abdullah al-Hussein. I give you the patience. May Allah give you patience. She says, what happened to Hussein? They said, he was trampled on by the horses of Bani Umayyah. She says, then what happened? They said they severed his head and he was raised on the spears of Bani Umayyah. So she would then say, where is Zainab? Did Zainab survive? They said, yeah, Zainab is in the house. So Baneen would go towards the house. Final words. I ask you, Baneen knows what Zainab looks like, right? Baneen raised Zainab, so she knows what Zainab looks like. So when Baneen enters the house, she sees a woman on the prayer mat. So she says, oh woman, have you seen Zainab? This woman with white hair, crying and lamenting, she would say, have you seen Zainab? So this woman would look up and she would say, oh Baneen, ana Zainab. Oh Baneen, I am Zainab. So imagine what Sayyidah Zainab went through, that the mother who raised her couldn't even recognize her. So she would say, Anti Zainab al-Hashimiyya, are you Zainab from the clan of Hashim? She would say, La ana Zainab al-Masbiyya, I am Zainab, the one who was taken captive. Then they would speak to each other. She would say, oh Zainab, was Abbas disloyal? Did Abbas not protect Hussein? Zainab would cry and say, no, do never say that. Abbas fought until his last breath, his hands were cut, he had an arrow in his eye, he fell from the horse, he couldn't protect his fall. Oh Ummul Baneen, until Abbas's last breath, the enemy didn't dare look at Hussein, but after Abbas was gone, they all attacked Abu Abdullah. So Ummul Baneen would go towards Jannatul Baqi and she would say, La tadu anni waiki Ummul Baneen, do not call me Ummul Baneen any longer. Why? She says, because I have lost my boys in Karbala. And she would say one thing, she would say, oh Abbas, oh my son Abbas, they say that when a man falls from the horse, how does he shield that fall? How does he protect his face? He uses his hands. Oh Abbas, I hear that you have no hands, and I hear that you were hit on your head. Oh Abbas, how did you fall? Oh Abbas, how did you protect your face? Inna lillah وإنا إليه الراجعون لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون صلوات